Danny Cole wiped the grease from his hands and checked his work tablet for the next job. The screen showed a water filtration unit in the residential wing of Nexus 7, the deep space trading station where he had worked for the past 3 years. He grabbed his tool bag and started walking through the busy corridors. Nexus 7 was home to dozens of alien species. Tall creatures with too many eyes walked past short creatures with no eyes at all. Danny had learned to stop staring after his first month on the station. Now, he just nodded politely and kept moving. Most aliens ignored humans anyway. His species had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and many still considered them primitive newcomers. The residential wing was quieter than the trading floors. Diplomats and wealthy merchants lived here, far from the noise and smell of the cargo bays. Danny preferred the cargo bays. The people there were friendlier, and nobody cared if he showed up with engine oil on his boots. He turned a corner and stopped. A young alien girl stood in the middle of the corridor. She had pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed too big for her delicate face. Her thin arms were wrapped around a leash, and she was pulling backward with all her strength. Danny recognized her species. She was from a peaceful world known for art and diplomacy. The creature at the end of the leash was not peaceful at all. Danny had never seen anything like it. The animal was the size of a large dog but built like a tank. Dark armored scales covered its body, and 6 powerful legs scraped against the floor. Its head was broad and flat, with rows of teeth visible even when its mouth was closed. Long claws clicked on the metal floor as it thrashed and scratched at its own body. The creature made a sound between a growl and a scream. It was clearly in distress. 2 merchants came around the corner from the other direction. When they saw the creature, they turned and ran without a word. Danny heard doors slamming shut all along the corridor. Within seconds, he and the alien girl were alone. The girl looked at Danny with desperate eyes. She was losing her grip on the leash, and tears were streaming down her blue cheeks. Danny set down his tool bag and walked toward her. The girl shouted something in a language his translator could not process. Then she switched to common galactic speech. Her voice was high and panicked. "Human, run. This is it will kill you." Danny looked at the creature. It was not looking at him. It was too busy scratching and biting at its own scales. Something was wrong with it, and the poor thing was suffering. "What is wrong with it?" Danny asked. The girl stared at him like he had lost his mind. "Did you not hear me? It is the most dangerous predator from my world. My people breed them as guard animals, but only trained handlers can control them. I should not even have outside our quarters, but he became so agitated that I thought a walk might calm him." Danny said, "That is his name." "Yes, but that is not important. You need to leave. If he gets free, he will attack anything that moves." Danny knelt down about 2 meters from the creature. The stopped thrashing for a moment and looked at him. Its eyes were yellow with vertical pupils like a cat. Danny could see intelligence in those eyes, and beneath the intelligence he could see pain. "Hey there, buddy," Danny said softly. "Something hurting you." The girl made a choking sound. "What are you doing? Get away from him." Danny ignored her. He watched the way was scratching at a specific spot behind his front leg. The scales there looked different from the rest. They were duller, and something dark was wedged between them. "I think I see the problem," Danny said. "He has got something stuck in his scales, some kind of gunk or residue. It is probably itching like crazy." The girl looked at the spot Danny was pointing to. Her eyes widened. "That must be from the cargo bay on the transport ship. We had to walk through a section that had some kind of chemical spill. I cleaned my own feet, but I did not think to check." "Can you give him a bath?" Danny asked. The girl let out a bitter laugh. "Are desert creatures. They hate water. If you try to bathe one, it will tear you apart. My people have specialized dry cleaning facilities but there is nothing like that on the station." Let out another pained howl and resumed his frantic scratching. The girl was pulled forward a few steps and nearly fell. Danny stood up and made a decision. "Okay, I think I can help." "Help?" The girl looked at him with complete confusion. "How can you possibly help?" "I have access to a utility room not far from here. It has warm water and some cleaning supplies. If we can get him there, I can try to wash that stuff out of his scales." The girl shook her head rapidly. "You are not listening to me. You cannot bathe. It is impossible. Handlers have died trying. My own uncle lost 3 fingers." Danny shrugged. "Maybe nobody tried it the right way. My grandmother had a farm back on Earth with some really mean goats. Everyone said they could not be handled, but she figured out that they just hated being cold. Warm them up first and they became gentle as lambs." "This is not a goat," the girl said firmly. "This is an apex predator that has killed grown adults." "Well, right now he is an apex predator who is really uncomfortable and needs help." Danny picked up his tool bag and slung it over his shoulder. "My name is Danny, by the way. What is yours?" The girl hesitated. Her grip on the leash was slipping and was getting more agitated by the second. She did not have many options. She said quietly, "My name is." "Nice to meet you. Now follow me, and try to keep from eating anyone on the way." Danny started walking down the corridor. After a moment, he heard, following behind him, the clicks of claws echoing off the walls. He tapped his communicator as he walked. A voice answered almost immediately. "Security, Chief Vance speaking." "Hey, it is Danny. I am walking through Residential Wing 7 with a girl and her pet, some kind of big scaly thing. People might call in some reports, but everything is fine." There was a pause. "Danny, are you talking about we have already had 6 panic calls." "Yeah, that is the one. Do not worry about it. I have got this under control." Another pause, longer this time. "Danny are extremely dangerous. So everyone keeps telling me. Listen, I need to use utility room 712. Can you make sure nobody bothers us for a while?" Sighed heavily. Danny could picture her rubbing her forehead the way she always did when humans did something that confused her. She was human herself, but she had been in space long enough to understand why other species found their behavior strange. "Fine," she said, "but if you die, I am not writing the report." "Fair enough, thanks." Danny ended the call and stopped in front of a plain metal door. He pressed his palm to the scanner, and the door slid open to reveal a small room with a large basin, several water hoses, and shelves full of cleaning supplies. He turned to look at. Her face was pale and she was trembling slightly, was still scratching and growling, his yellow eyes wild with discomfort. "Okay," Danny said, "let us give your boy a bath." Looked at him like he had just announced his intention to walk into a fire. She opened her mouth to protest again, but no words came out. Danny stepped into the utility room and began filling the basin with warm water. Stood frozen in the doorway of the utility room. Her hands were shaking so badly that the leash rattled against her palm. Was still scratching and growling, but he had quieted slightly since entering the small room. Perhaps the enclosed space made him feel safer, or perhaps he was simply exhausted from his earlier panic. Danny moved around the room with calm efficiency. He adjusted the water temperature several times, testing it with his hand until he seemed satisfied. Then he grabbed a bottle from one of the shelves and read the label carefully. "Mild cleaning solution," he muttered to himself. "Non-toxic, safe for organic surfaces. This should work." Finally found her voice. "Human, Danny, please listen to me. I have raised since he was a hatchling. I know him better than anyone. What you are planning to do is suicide." Danny looked up at her with a friendly expression. "You said your people use dry cleaning facilities for right. Has anyone ever actually tried water?" "Of course they have tried," said. "Centuries ago when we first began domesticating. The results were always the same: violence and death. Eventually, my people developed alternative methods." But that was centuries ago, Danny said. Maybe the back then were wilder. Maybe the water was too cold. Maybe the handlers were scared and picked up on that fear. Stared at him. You think you know better than centuries of experience. Danny shook his head. No, I think maybe nobody has tried it the right way in a long time, and I think is suffering right now, and I want to help him. He finished filling the basin and turned off the water. Steam rose gently from the surface. Danny dipped his whole arm in and nodded with satisfaction. Perfect temperature, he said. Warm enough to be soothing, not hot enough to cause any stress. Looked at the steaming water and then at. Her pet had stopped scratching and was now staring at the basin with his head tilted to one side. His yellow eyes tracked the wisps of steam rising through the air. He has never seen that much water before, said quietly. Water is precious. We collect it in small containers, drink from shallow dishes. Danny nodded slowly. So he does not associate water with danger. He just does not know what to make of it. He walked over to where stood and knelt down about a meter away. This attention shifted to him immediately. Those yellow eyes studied Danny with predatory focus, held her breath. Hey, Danny said softly, remember me. I am the guy who is going to make you feel better. Let out a low rumble. It was not quite a growl, but it was not friendly either. His claws flexed against the floor, leaving shallow scratches in the metal. Danny did not move. He just kept talking in that same soft, steady voice. I know something is bothering you, buddy. I can see it right there behind your leg. Must be driving you crazy. Itching and burning all day long. You just want it to stop, right? His head tilted again. The rumbling faded slightly. Watched in disbelief. She had seen trained handlers approach before. They always wore protective gear. They always carried control rods that could deliver a painful shock if the animal became aggressive. Danny had nothing but his bare hands and his quiet voice. I am going to reach out now, Danny said. Nice and slow. You just stay calm and everything will be fine. He extended his hand toward, palm up, fingers relaxed. Wanted to scream at him to stop, but she was afraid any sudden noise would trigger an attack. Sniffed the air. His nostrils flared wide, taking in Danny's scent. Then slowly, he leaned forward and touched his snout to Danny's palm. Let out a gasp. Danny smiled. There we go, good boy, see, I am not so scary. Sniffed his hand more thoroughly, then moved up to sniff his arm, his shoulder, his face. Danny held perfectly still and let the investigate. After nearly a minute, made a new sound. It was deeper than the rumble from before, and it seemed to come from his chest rather than his throat. Is that purring? Danny asked. Could not believe what she was hearing. Do not purr. They are not capable of making that sound. Well, he is definitely making it, Danny said. He slowly brought his other hand up and scratched behind one of his ear plates. The purring grew louder. Felt tears forming in her eyes. She had owned for 8 years. She loved him more than almost anything in the universe, but he had never let her touch him like this. He tolerated her, obeyed her commands, protected her from danger. Yet there had always been a wall between them, a distance that she had accepted as simply the nature of. This human had broken through that wall in less than 5 minutes. Okay, Danny said, still scratching his ear plates. Now comes the tricky part. We need to get him into that water. He stood up slowly and followed the movement with his eyes. Danny walked backward toward the basin, keeping his attention on the whole time. Took a hesitant step forward, then another. That is it, Danny encouraged him. Come on over here, I have got something nice for you. He reached down and scooped up a handful of warm water, then let it drip through his fingers. Watched the droplets fall with intense curiosity. His tongue flicked out and caught one of the drops. You like that, Danny said. There is plenty more where that came from. Moved closer to the basin. He was still cautious, but his body language had changed completely. The tension was gone from his muscles. His scales lay flat against his body instead of bristling outward. He looked like a curious animal investigating something new, not a predator preparing to attack. Danny cupped more water in his hands and held it out toward, sniffed it, then lapped at it with his long tongue. The purring sound intensified. "Okay," Danny said without looking away from. "I need you to let go of the leash." His grip tightened automatically. What? He needs to feel like this is his choice. If he feels trapped or forced, he might panic. Just drop the leash and step back. Every instinct possessed screamed at her to refuse. Releasing in an enclosed space with a vulnerable human was madness. If something went wrong, Danny would die, and it would be her fault. But she looked at and she saw something she had never seen before. Her fierce, dangerous pet looked happy. Genuinely, completely happy. She let go of the leash. The leather strap fell to the floor with a soft sound. Did not even glance at it. His attention was entirely focused on Danny and the warm water. Danny dipped both hands into the basin and brought up a generous amount of water. He let it flow over his head, down his neck, across the scales on his back, closed his eyes and leaned into the sensation. Then Danny reached for the bottle of cleaning solution. Covered her face with her hands. She could not watch. She had seen what did to things that caused them discomfort. The sound of screaming and tearing flesh was something she had witnessed twice in her life, and both times had given her nightmares for months. She heard Danny pour the solution. She heard the sound of scrubbing. She heard splashing water. And then she heard something impossible. She lowered her hands and looked. Danny was covered in soap suds from his chest to his hair. He was laughing, and was rolling around in the basin like a hatchling playing in sand. His 6 legs kicked at the air while Danny scrubbed the irritated spot behind his front leg. The dark residue was coming loose in thick chunks, floating away in the soapy water. Was making a sound had never heard from any before. It was something between the purring from earlier and a high-pitched whine of pure contentment. His yellow eyes were half-closed, and his tongue hung out of his mouth. He looked ridiculous. He looked wonderful. Started laughing through her tears. She laughed until her stomach hurt, and she had to lean against the wall for support. Danny grinned at her, soap bubbles sliding down his face. "See, I told you I had this under control." Outside the utility room could hear voices. Many voices, speaking many different languages. She turned and saw faces crowding the window and the doorway. Aliens of a dozen species stood watching with expressions of complete shock. Word had spread through the station. A human was bathing and was enjoying it. The crowd outside the utility room grew larger with every passing minute. Could see tall traders pressing against the window, their multiple eyes blinking in disbelief. Short merchants stood on their toes to peer over the shoulders of taller species. Even a few, massive beings who rarely showed interest in anything besides combat, had gathered to watch the impossible scene unfolding inside. Danny seemed completely unaware of the audience. His entire focus was on who was still splashing happily in the warm water. The had rolled onto his back, exposing his pale underbelly, and Danny was gently scrubbing the scales there with slow, circular motions. "That is the last of it," Danny said, washing away a final chunk of dark residue. "No more itchy stuff. You feel better now, buddy." Responded by shaking his entire body, sending soap and water flying in all directions. Danny laughed and shielded his face with his arms. Got splashed through the doorway, but she did not mind. She was still too amazed to care about getting wet. A commotion in the corridor made her turn around. The crowd was parting, and she immediately recognized the tall figure pushing through. Ambassador, her uncle, was one of the most respected diplomats on. He was also one of the few people in the galaxy whose opinion she truly feared. He stopped in the doorway and stared into the utility room. His dark eyes moved from Danny to and back again. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Had never seen her uncle speechless before. "Uncle," she began, but he held up a hand to silence her. Watched as Danny helped climb out of the basin. The scales were gleaming now, clean and healthy looking for the first time in weeks. Danny grabbed a large towel from a shelf and began drying his body with gentle strokes. Stood perfectly still, his eyes half closed, that strange purring sound still rumbling from his chest. "This is not possible," said finally. His voice was barely above a whisper. Danny looked up and noticed the ambassador for the first time. "Oh, hello. You must be a relative of. The family resemblance is pretty strong." Stepped into the utility room, moving slowly as if he expected to wake from a dream at any moment. "Human, do you have any idea what you have done?" Danny shrugged. Gave a dirty animal a bath, not exactly heroic work. "That animal," said, pointing at, "has killed. Our family purchased him from a military breeding program. He was trained as a guard beast, conditioned to attack anything that threatened his owner. He once tore apart 2 armed intruders who broke into our estate." Danny paused his toweling and looked back at him with those yellow eyes and made a small chirping sound. His tongue lolled out, and his tail wagged slightly. "Really?" Danny said. "He seems pretty friendly to me." Turn 2, explain. How did this happen? Told him everything. The irritation in scales, the panic in the corridor, the human maintenance worker who offered to help despite every warning she gave him. As she spoke, his expression shifted from confusion to something else, something like wonder mixed with fear. When she finished, was silent for a long moment. The crowd outside had grown quiet as well, straining to hear the conversation. "Human," said finally, "Danny, my people have worked with for over 2,000 years. In all that time, we have learned many things about them. We have learned that they cannot be bathed. We have learned that they do not purr. We have learned that they do not show affection to anyone outside their owner's immediate family, and even then, only reluctantly." He gestured at, who was now rubbing his head against Danny's leg like an oversized cat. "In the span of 1 hour, you have proven all of that wrong. How?" Danny finished drying and hung the towel back on its hook. He seemed uncomfortable with the attention. "I do not know what to tell you, sir. I just treated him like any other animal. Spoke softly, moved slowly, let him get comfortable with me. Nothing special." "Nothing special," repeated. He let out a long breath. "The Council of Handlers on will find this very interesting. They have spent centuries developing methods to manage. Entire academic programs exist to study their behavior, and a human maintenance worker has accomplished something none of them ever could." Security Chief Vance pushed through the crowd and entered the utility room. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and the kind of face that suggested she had seen too much strangeness to be surprised by anything. Yet even she looked impressed. "Danny," she said, "care to explain why half the station is crowded outside this room?" Danny scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. "I gave a bath." Looked then at Danny, then at the watching crowd. She shook her head slowly. "Of course you did, because that is what humans do, find dangerous predators and turn them into pets." A trader near the doorway spoke up. "Is it true what they say about humans and animals, that your species has tamed creatures even more dangerous than?" Danny thought about it. "Well, we have wolves. We turned them into dogs a few thousand years ago. They hunt in packs and can bring down animals much larger than themselves. Now they sleep on our beds and beg for treats." The eyes widened. "You let predators sleep in your beds?" "Sure, they like to cuddle." A murmur ran through the crowd. Several aliens exchanged concerned looks. Another voice called out, this one from a small with bright orange skin. "What about the creatures with the teeth, the ones that live in your waters?" "Sharks," Danny said. "Some people swim with them. There is a whole tourist industry around it." "And the large striped predators?" "Tigers, we have those in zoos. Some people even keep them as private pets, though that is usually illegal. They are endangered, so we have breeding programs to keep them from going extinct. You save your predators from extinction, the sounded baffled. Of course, they are important to the ecosystem. Plus, they are beautiful animals. It would be sad if they disappeared. The crowd fell into confused silence, watched their faces, and realized something important. These aliens were not just surprised by what Danny had done. They were struggling to understand the fundamental mindset behind it. To them, dangerous animals were threats to be avoided or controlled through force and technology. The idea of approaching a predator with patience and kindness, of earning its trust rather than demanding its obedience, was completely foreign to their way of thinking. But to Danny, it was simply normal. Ambassador cleared his throat. "Human, Danny, I must ask you something and I want an honest answer." Danny met his gaze steadily. "Go ahead. When you approached my nieces in that corridor, did you know it would not attack you?" Danny was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "No, I did not know for certain, are not common where I come from. I had never even seen one before today." "Then why did you approach?" Danny looked at who was now lying on the floor with his head resting on Danny's foot. "Because he was suffering. I could see it in the way he moved, the way he scratched at himself. He was in pain and nobody was helping him. Everyone was too scared to try." "So you risked your life," said slowly, "for an animal you had never met, an animal that might have killed you." Danny shrugged. "It was not that complicated. He needed help. I could help, so I helped." Stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to face the crowd gathered outside the utility room. "This," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the corridor, "is why humans are different. Not because of their technology or their strength or their numbers, because they will risk everything to help a creature in need, even when logic says they should flee." He turned back to Danny. "Thank you for helping my niece's pet, and thank you for teaching us something we should have learned long ago." Danny shifted uncomfortably. It was really no big deal. Anyone would have done the same. Snorted, "No, Danny, they really would not have." Lifted his head and made that strange purring sound again. His yellow eyes looked up at Danny with something that might have been gratitude, or maybe it was something deeper, something like love. Knelt beside her pet and touched his scales gently. For the first time in 8 years, did not pull away from her touch. Instead, he leaned into it, the same way he had leaned into Danny's hands. She looked up at the human with tears in her eyes. "How can I ever thank you?" Danny smiled. "Just take good care of him, and maybe try giving him warm baths from now on. I think he likes them." The crowd outside the utility room did not disperse. If anything, it continued to grow as word spread through Nexus 7. Danny could see species he had never encountered before pushing through to catch a glimpse of the human who had tamed it. He was starting to feel uncomfortable. Danny had never liked being the center of attention. He was a maintenance worker, someone who fixed broken things in quiet corners of the station where nobody noticed him. This kind of spotlight was the last thing he wanted. On the other hand, seemed to be enjoying himself immensely. The had discovered that rolling onto his back and wiggling earned him scratches from Danny, and he was taking full advantage of this new knowledge. Every few minutes, he would flip over and make pleading noises until Danny rubbed his belly. Watched her pet with an expression of amazed disbelief. "I have never seen him act like this," she said for what must have been the 10th time. "He is like a completely different animal." "He is the same animal," Danny said. "He just feels safe now. When creatures feel safe, they show their true nature, was always capable of being like this. He just needed someone to help him relax." Ambassador had not left the utility room. He stood near the door, observing everything with the careful attention of a professional diplomat. His dark eyes tracked every interaction between Danny and cataloging details that he would no doubt report to the government. "Your species has a strange relationship with animals," said. I have studied human culture for decades, but I still do not fully understand it. Danny looked up from scratching his ear plates. What do you mean? On most worlds, animals are tools. They serve functions. Guard animals protect property. Transport animals carry loads. Food animals provide nutrition. The relationship is purely practical. Paused. But humans seem to form emotional bonds with creatures that serve no useful purpose at all. You keep animals in your home simply because you enjoy their company. Danny thought about his mother's cat back on Earth. The fat orange tabby who did nothing but sleep in sunbeams and knock things off tables. His mother loved that cat more than she loved most of her relatives. Yeah, Danny said. We call them pets or companions. They are like family members. Family members, repeated. You consider animals to be part of your family. Some of us do. Not everyone, but a lot of people. Growing up, my grandmother had dogs, cats, chickens, goats, and a horse named Patches. She treated all of them like her children, talked to them, worried about them, celebrated their birthdays. The aliens watching through the doorway murmured among themselves. A tall with silver skin spoke up. Your grandmother celebrated the birth anniversaries of animals. Danny nodded. Patches lived to be 32 years old. Grandma threw him a party every single year, made a special cake out of oats and apples. This is madness, they said, but his tone was more curious than critical. What purpose does such behavior serve? Danny considered the question carefully. I guess it does not serve any practical purpose. It just makes us happy, and it makes the animals happy too. Patches loved those birthday parties. He would prance around and show off for all the guests. The animal understood the concept of a birthday celebration. Maybe not the concept, but he understood that he was special, that people loved him and wanted to make him feel good. Chose that moment to roll over and press his head against Danny's chest. The purring sound was louder than ever, a deep rumble that Danny could feel in his bones. He wrapped his arms around this thick neck and hugged him gently. The crowd went silent, even looked stunned. Human, a voice called from the back of the crowd. Are you hugging a? Danny looked up, slightly embarrassed. He seemed like he wanted one. Do not hug, someone else said. They are not capable of such behavior. Well is hugging me back, so I guess this one is capable. It was true. Had wrapped his front legs around Danny's waist and was pressing closer, making small, contented sounds. His tail wagged so hard that his whole body shook. Covered her mouth with both hands. Tears were streaming down her blue cheeks again. She had tried so many times over the years to get to accept affection from her. She had followed every guideline, every technique recommended by animal experts, and had always kept his distance. He protected her, obeyed her, but he never let her close. Now a stranger was hugging him, and acted like it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. It is not fair, whispered. I love him so much. Why will he not let me do that? Danny heard her and gently untangled himself from. They made a disappointed sound but let him go. Maybe he will now, Danny said. Come here. Approached slowly, uncertainly. She had been knocked down by before when she got too close too fast. Her body remembered those impacts even if her mind had forgiven them. Danny took her hand and placed it on his head, right between his ear plates. Just touch him gently. Let him know you are here. His fingers trembled against scales. His yellow eyes looked up at her. For a moment, nobody moved. Then leaned into her touch and closed his eyes. Let out a sob. She dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around her pet's neck, burying her face in his clean, warm scales. Made that purring sound again and pressed against her, his tail wagging slowly. The crowd watched in silence. Even the most skeptical observers seemed moved by the scene. Ambassador cleared his throat. His voice was rougher than before. 8 years. She has owned him for 8 years. He has never allowed her to hold him like that. Danny nodded. Sometimes animals just need someone to show them that affection is safe. Once they learn that, they can accept it from others too. And you knew this would happen. No, I hoped it would. Animals can sense when someone cares about them. Knows loves him, he always knew. He just did not know how to respond to it. Danny smiled softly. Now he does. Lifted her head, her face wet with tears but glowing with happiness. Thank you, Danny. Thank you so much. Danny felt his own eyes getting a little moist. He blinked quickly and looked away. It was nothing, really. A new voice spoke from the corridor. It was not nothing. The crowd parted to reveal a small delegation of aliens wearing formal robes. Danny recognized the emblems on their clothing. These were members of the Galactic Council, the governing body that oversaw all trade and diplomacy on stations like Nexus 7. The speaker was an elderly female with deep wrinkles around her large eyes. I am Counselor. I have monitored this situation since reports first reached my office. Danny straightened up nervously. Counselor, I hope I have not caused any problems. Problems? Let out a dry laugh. You have caused something far more significant than problems, young human. You have caused questions. Questions? Questions about everything we thought we knew about relations, about animal behavior, about the nature of trust and connection. Gestured at, who was still being held by a tearful. That creature was bred and trained to be a weapon. It should be impossible for it to behave this way. Yet here we are. She turned to address the crowd. I have been on this station for 40 years. I have seen humans do many things that confused me. I have seen them rush toward danger instead of away from it. I have seen them sacrifice their own comfort for the well-being of strangers. I have seen them form bonds with beings so different from themselves that communication seemed impossible. Her eyes returned to Danny. But I think today I finally understand something fundamental about your species. You do not see barriers between yourselves and other creatures. Where we see differences, you see possibilities. Where we see threats, you see potential friends. Danny shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. I do not know about all that. I just saw an animal that needed help. Yes, said softly, that is precisely my point. She reached into her robe and a small device. She pressed a button, and Danny heard a series of clicks and whirs throughout the station. I have just sent a report to every major government in the Galactic Council, announced. By tomorrow, the story of what happened here will be known throughout civilized space, the human who bathed and lived. Danny groaned. Please do not call it that. I do not want to be famous for washing an animal. Smiled. It was a strange expression on her wrinkled face. You may not want fame, young human, but you have earned something far more valuable today. You have earned respect. She turned and walked away, her delegation following behind her. The crowd began to disperse slowly, aliens whispering to each other as they left. Danny looked down at who was still kneeling on the floor within her arms. The had fallen asleep, his chest rising and falling with slow, peaceful breaths. Well, Danny said, that was strange. Laughed through her tears. Strain. You just changed everything we knew about. You let the entire galaxy watch you do it, and you are calling it strange. Danny shrugged. I have had weirder days. Stirred in his sleep, his legs twitching like he was dreaming of running. A small, happy sound escaped his throat. For the first time in 8 years, Spet was sleeping peacefully in her arms. And somewhere across the station, stories were already spreading about the strange humans who turned predators into friends. 3 days had passed since the incident in the utility room. Danny had returned to his normal duties, fixing broken systems and maintaining equipment in the quieter sections of Nexus 7. He preferred the routine. It was simple and predictable, unlike the chaos that had erupted after news of Sbath spread through the station. He was replacing a damaged power coupling in a storage bay when he heard footsteps approaching. The familiar click of claws on metal told him who it was before he even turned around. Bounded toward him across the storage bay, his scales gleaming in the artificial light. The tongue hung out, and his tail wagged so hard that his entire back end swayed with each step. Behind him, jogged to keep up, holding the leash loosely in one hand. "Wait," she called, but they ignored her. Danny barely had time to set down his tools before crashed into him. The impact knocked him backward, but did not seem to care. He licked Danny's face enthusiastically while making those strange purring sounds. "Okay, okay," Danny laughed, pushing gently at this broad head. "I missed you too, buddy. Calm down." Caught up and pulled back with an apologetic expression. "Sorry." He gets excited whenever he picks up your scent. "We have walked past this section 3 times today because he keeps pulling me in this direction." Danny wiped the drool from his face with his sleeve. "Is that why I keep hearing scratching sounds in the corridor? I thought we had a pest problem." "Just a problem," smiled. "He has been different since you bathed him, calmer, happier. He even let my uncle pet him yesterday. I thought uncle was going to cry." Danny scratched behind his ear plates, earning another burst of purring. "How about you? Everything going okay?" Nodded. "Better than okay. My uncle has been contacted by dozens of officials from. They want to know everything about what happened. Some of them think you might have discovered a new method of handling. Others think is a unique case, an outlier who behaves differently from normal." "What do you think?" Considered the question. "I think it has nothing to do with being unique. I think it has everything to do with how you approached him. You were not afraid. You did not treat him like a monster. You treated him like a living creature who deserved kindness." Danny shrugged. "That is just basic decency. To humans, maybe. To the rest of the galaxy, it is revolutionary." They walked together through the storage bay, padding happily between them. Danny showed some of the equipment he was working on, explaining the basics of station maintenance. She listened with genuine interest, asking questions about things that most people would find boring. "Can I ask you something personal?" said eventually. "Sure." "Why did you become a maintenance worker? You could do anything. After what happened with, you could probably get a job with any government or corporation in the galaxy. You could be famous, rich, powerful." Danny thought about it. "I like fixing things. When something is broken and I make it work again, there is a satisfaction in that, a sense of completion. I do not need fame or power, I just need to feel useful." Looked at him with those large dark eyes. "You are a very strange human." "So people keep telling me." They reached the end of the storage bay and stepped into a corridor with large windows overlooking the stars. Ships moved in the distance, entering and leaving the station's busy ports. Nexus 7 was a crossroads of the galaxy, a place where dozens of species came together to trade and negotiate. "My uncle wants to speak with you," said. "He is leaving tomorrow to return to. Before he goes, he wants to offer you something." Danny raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" "A position with the diplomatic corps. You would be an advisor on human-animal relations. The pay is excellent, and you would travel to worlds most humans have never seen." Danny stopped walking, bumped into his legs and sat down, looking up at him with patient yellow eyes. "That is a generous offer," Danny said slowly. "But you are going to refuse." "Yeah," Danny looked out at the stars. "I appreciate it, I really do. But this is my home. These corridors, these storage bays, these broken power couplings. This is where I belong." Nodded. She did not seem surprised. "I told my uncle you would say that. He did not believe me." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that humans do not seek glory. They do not chase opportunities the way other species do. They find a place where they can be useful, and they stay there until they are needed somewhere else." Danny smiled. "That is pretty accurate." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the ships move against the backdrop of distant stars. Lay down at Danny's feet, his head resting on his massive paws. "I have to go soon," said eventually. My uncle has meetings to attend, and I need to start packing for our departure, but I wanted to say something first. What is that? Turned to face him fully. Her expression was serious, but her eyes were warm. You changed my life, Danny Cole. 3 days ago, I had a pet who tolerated me. Now I have a companion who loves me. That might not seem like a big thing to you, but to me, it means everything. Danny felt his face getting warm. I just gave him a bath. You gave me hope. For 8 years, I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I could not connect with the way others connect with their. I tried so hard and nothing worked. She paused. You showed me that the problem was not me. The problem was the approach. The assumption that affection must be earned through dominance and control. She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, her grip surprisingly strong. My people have a tradition, she said. When someone saves your life, you owe them a debt that can never be fully repaid. But you can acknowledge the debt. You can name the person who saved you as a friend of your family forever. Danny shifted awkwardly. You do not have to do that, really. I know I do not have to, I want to, squeezed his hand gently. Danny Cole, I name you a friend of house. From this day forward, you and your descendants will be welcome on as honored guests. Our homes are your homes. Our resources are your resources. This is my gift to you. Danny did not know what to say. He had never been good with formal ceremonies or emotional declarations. He was a maintenance worker. He fixed things and stayed out of the way. But looking at his earnest face, he knew he could not refuse. Thank you, he said simply. That means a lot. Released his hand and stepped back. I should go now, but I will visit you again before we leave tomorrow, and I will keep in touch. Will never forgive me if I let him lose contact with his favorite human. She tugged on his leash, and the rose reluctantly. He pressed his head against Danny's leg one last time, making a soft whining sound. Go on, buddy, Danny said, scratching his ear plates. I will see you tomorrow. Followed down the corridor, looking back several times as they walked. Danny watched until they turned a corner and disappeared from sight. He stood alone by the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, news of what had happened was spreading. Stories about a human who bathed and lived. Stories about a species that turned predators into pets and monsters into friends. Danny did not think of himself as remarkable. He had just done what seemed right at the moment, helped a creature in need, showed kindness instead of fear. But maybe that was the point. Maybe what made humans special was not strength or intelligence or technology. Maybe it was something simpler, the willingness to reach out, the belief that every creature deserved compassion, the refusal to accept that any being was beyond connection. A ship passed by the window, its lights blinking against the darkness. Danny watched it go, wondering about the beings aboard. Were they friends or strangers, allies or enemies? Maybe it did not matter. Maybe every new encounter was just an opportunity waiting to happen. He picked up his tool bag and headed back to work. There was a broken atmospheric regulator in Section 12 that needed his attention. The station would not fix itself. But as he walked, Danny smiled. Because somewhere on Nexus 7, a fearsome predator was wagging his tail. And somewhere in the galaxy, stories were being told about the strange species called humans. The species that found friends everywhere they went. Even in the most unlikely places.